Hello, this is, what day is it? It's Tuesday, and we are still in the early cycle of Pisces, and this is a 3-card reading for the Swans in Pisces. I already sent, I think they were pretty bad photos. I don't know, sometimes I seem to be able to do it okay, and other times not so much. But I sent some photos of 3 cards. And I believe, if I'm remembering the order correctly, it was clean in Grandmother's Ocean, water healing, so the Night River Shrine, and what was the third one? So wind people messengers. And I find this to be an interesting combination of things, especially given the sequence of last cycle's reading, where it was, and again, let me see if I can remember the order. So it was foundation at birth. So that obscured energy, foggy, misty, not quite sure of the path, not quite sure of identity maybe, and to just wait, like to not do anything until the fog clears, and to occupy, the invitation to occupy oneself by engaging in things that are closer, things that can be recognized in a different way, I guess. Because in fog or mist or heavy snow, things can change their appearance. Maybe not change appearance, but presents itself differently. Things are not what they seem, I think, is maybe the analogy or the phrase, turn of phrase, or whatever that is. And then after that came the ice card, so unfolding bone mother, and then this was the energy of standstill, so almost like a stepping up of the foggy, like hidden pathway to just like, and now you're frozen in place. And how often we can feel like that is such an undesirable place, to be stuck, to be frozen, to not feel like anything is moving. And how often we fight that. We try to make it not be that way. Just like with this weather, like we've just been, I just find this so funny. And I guess I'm doing like both the readings on video at the same time, but it seems to make sense to me, like the sequence, like this cycle's reading and how it connects to last cycle's reading. So this, like the weather that we've been having, and we have had so much ice, and we have had so much obscurity. The weather has been all over the place. We've had these warm days, we've had these super cold days, we've had like blizzard conditions. I saw a video last night of just this crazy pile up on the 400 highway. Like it was just like, it was madness, and it went on forever. It seemed like just car after car after car, and there was like 3 segments of this pile up. And just the juxtaposition of that people were still driving so fast on a very busy highway, trying to make it to work or get home from work or whatever. I can't remember the timing of it, but in such obscured conditions, just trying to punch through. And it ended up being a very, very scary situation. And it could have been so much more serious than it was. And so just kind of linking back to that of just like, when things are obscured, just sit down, just wait, just like stay at home, work from home if you can. I mean, it's not always possible. And like from a emotional or spiritual position, like we can't always see very clearly. Often we don't see clearly. We only get to see, I was told once that we only ever really get to see what's, up to the next bend in the road. And then once we get to that bend, then sometimes it can open up and we can see a little bit further down the road. And we are just expected to, we just continue on, and we can adjust our speed. It's okay to just be, I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what I'm sensing, but that doesn't mean necessarily that I'm doing anything wrong. It just means that maybe I need to just chill out a little bit. And then beyond chilling out, like looking at things a bit differently, because with all of this ice, like there's been a lot of inconvenience and like danger conditions, like people have been falling, obviously. I mean, we have to adjust our behavior. We have to like not drive so fast, or just making different choices. And if we slow down enough and just witness wow, I don't like that word enough. If we can slow down a little bit and take the time to witness the power of nature at work, or witness, how we are sorting things out in our own time, maybe. Just kind of trusting to the cycles to work themselves out. And I have a lot of fondness for ice. Ice has shaped our planet. And it seems that nothing is moving when ice is involved, that nothing is moving, but so much is moving. And, just all of the stuff that happens under the surface, when we seem to be at a standstill, I feel, often I can drop into, what's happening with me if I can just, not freak out that I'm not moving, or that I seem to not be moving. It's just a quieter movement, and it's not going to last forever, that nothing lasts forever. No feeling is final. No season is final. Everything just kind of, shifts and changes as it needs to. And then the third reading in the third card in that reading for last cycle was the, what was it? The Bee Queen. And what's the word? Oh, where did I put it? I don't know. I had all the cards laid out. Yeah, anyway, the Bee Queen. And that is all about the songs under the surface. And I think that we had that reading right around Imbolc, where, it's like, it's not quite the deepest part of the winter. We're past midway-ish, or coming up to midway. And the earth isn't waking up yet, but like the term is that, or it can be the term is that she's turning, in her sleep, that there's movement there. And oftentimes I've heard people talk about Imbolc as or is it sometimes called like St. Brigid's Day? People light fires. Anyway, I could get into this whole thing around Brigid and the triple aspect goddess, and how the hag of the storm hags have been erased and broken up, like the sequence of how they relate to each other have been broken up and anethicized and what do you call it? Made palatable. But Brigid is important. She's one of the aspects of nature, as far as I can tell. And so at that time of the year, in some, I guess you would say like Celtic tradition, lighting fires, like Brigid's fires around Imbolc is fairly common practice, or at least it was. And I think lots of people are reclaiming that. And doing it possibly in recognition that things are still alive, even when they don't seem alive, that there is the promise of life under the surface. And we just need to hold on. Stories around the Kaliak, and to me, she's one of the most anchoring deities, aspects of nature, however you want to say it, in European tradition. This giantess and this land shaper, bone mother type. And they say, I read this little story that around that time of the year, that she gathers the rest of her wood for the winter. And that's the final pulling in of resource to make it through this last little bit, because spring is coming. Life is still living, that the seeds are talking to each other and making plans for spring, for St. Patty's Day is what it is now, I guess, or what it's called now, but really that connects to, and again, in Celtic European tradition, and I'm talking earth-based tradition, the day before St. Patty's Day was Sheila Nagige Day. And she's a whole other character, but again, she is related to these storm hags, these land shapers, these wild aspects of nature, and she also is connected to wells of mystery and magic and rejuvenation and all these kinds of things. And so all of that connects into that third card in the sequence of last cycle, of just the song is not over. And sometimes we can really forget that in the dark days of the end of January, beginning of February. And now here we are and coming to, and I guess this is going to be a long video, it's 12 minutes, 34 seconds, doing the previous cycle's reading, and now let's get into this cycle's reading, which is a continuation, in my opinion, at least in this case, in this moment. So the cards that I pulled, so this one, I don't know, it's hard for me to tell if I'm actually making a good quality video or not, because I'm so new to this. It's very strange. Okay, so when this is kind of my feeling, so it snowed yet again. There are many people that I've been talking to who are really in crisis. A lot of stuff happens in the winter. A lot of illness, a lot of people crossing over, a lot of, winter is the time of fear, the time of the kidneys in our body, water, frozenness, darkness, and this can be such a challenge, as we've just been talking about, I think we know in a logical way all the time that life is moving, that we're not going to just stay here in winter endlessly, although, I mean, sometimes, there's that fear with our environment changing so much, things shortening and lengthening in ways that we're not used to. It's very disturbing. But coming to, in this cycle now, with something like Clean and Grandmother's Ocean, in this sequence, I feel that it's talking about flow and coming out of a frozen state. And if we have been engaging in our work around being frozen in place, and I don't know if you're like me, if you want to call it meditation or whatever, or yoga, or I don't know, it seems to be that I actually just get it like right at the end. Like I'm just like, oh, now I know what I'm supposed to do. I kind of fall into this place and then it's over. And I feel like, you know, when there's no other option but just to be still, and we have all of that thing that happens of like, of fighting it, trying to push it away, trying to make it something else, trying to, I don't know, distract ourselves. And then I think like the part of the cycle of just going into a place of acceptance, and even more than accepting, learning how to work with it. And maybe that's, you know, just coming out of survival. Like, okay, well, here it is, and there is nothing I can do to change the situation. So I might as well learn how to work with it. And then it seems to be that right at that moment, something opens. At least that's often my experience. And flow happens. And really, what can resist the ocean? You know, like we can't even fathom the power of the ocean unless we've been out in the middle of it and seen those giant waves, and know that we are absolutely not in control. But that we can learn how to work with the way that the ocean moves. And I think that this has something to do with this card in this position right now, is a lot about emotion and a lot about, I would say cleansing, like it does say clean in Grandmother's Ocean. I don't love that term so much anymore, cleansing, because I feel like it can make us feel as if we've done something wrong. And really, like any of us, all we can ever really do is the best that we can do with what we have. And that changes all the time. And so, you know, the idea that ocean water is very cleansing, salt water is very cleansing. You know, if I'm feeling sore in my body, or my emotions are feeling really constricted and condensed, one of the first things I'll do is have a really heavily salted bath and basically create an ocean in my bathtub. And similar to that, our flow of emotion can be very cleansing. If we've been feeling stuck, if we've been feeling overwhelmed, if we've been feeling, any of those things, what we need is a release. And that release is part of the cleansing, to get things moving again. And then the next part. So, okay, let me see if I can remember. What was the question I asked? Okay, so what is the energy? Like, what is the overarching energy for this cycle? So Pisces into Aries. The end of winter into the beginning of spring. And so that was the first card of just like, okay, what's the energy here? And am I remembering this correctly? I think I am. And then the next, so the currents to what's the current wave, and then what's the best way to navigate it? What's the energy that we can best use to navigate this new wave? Because being in the midst of lots of swells of upheaval, as much as it's like we've come out of this, or we're coming out of this frozen place, whether it's out of fear or um, so many reasons, it's just not moving. And then we are all of a sudden, you know, like when the ice flows break up, and it's quite like it's lots of noise, and it can be quite dynamic. And the waves are released, and there's so much more water, you know, like places like flood, and people's basements are inundated with water. And then it's like, you know, we go from complaining about the ice and the cold to complaining about the mud and the rain and the water everywhere. It's just, we just love to complain. But here we are, like at the beginning of this, like, ooh, now things are starting to move along. Here are the emotions, like we're able to access emotion again, or access, like we're able to have the space to express these emotions. How to work with that. And this second card, again, another water card, and there are a lot of water cards in this deck, because I am water clan. And water and fire are the building blocks of everything here on this planet. So how to greet this beginning of flow, this upheaval, like we're coming into the energy of spring, which for a lot of people is very intense. Like we just like, all of a sudden it's so busy. And I am one of those people of springtime. It's like, I'm so exhausted. I would just love the snow back. You know, and especially this spring for us is going to be enormous. Like we need the energy of Aries. We need that the driving force of spring to get us moving again. And also in this second card, a request to, now that we've been doing this work of reflecting, and seeing what it is that we're feeling, examining what it is that we're doing, looking at our motivations, because we've had that still time. If we've taken that still time to really look without judgment, without story, as much as possible, and just observe, like, oh, isn't that interesting? I'm still doing that thing. I'm still reacting that way. How can I change it? And so like going into this, like we're just like, you know, the engines are starting to turn. And in this revelation of some of our deeper nature, then it's also time to heal, and to tap into forgiveness. And this is a reoccurring energy. Like this card has come up several times in a few different readings over the last week. And I just find that so fascinating. And I shuffle really, really well. So I don't know. It just is what it is, I guess. And so with this card, healing with the Night River, there is this direction around, we cannot really help what happens to us. It's sometimes we don't have choice around how other people behave. We only have choice around how we respond. In the moment, in the subsequent days, in the subsequent weeks, or whatever. And beyond that, we also have choice around like what we're going to hang on to, what we are going to allow ourselves to keep eating, that feeds into bitterness, and seclusion and withholding and self-protection, like all of those different kinds of things. And we're still seized. Like we can still be like in that frozen place if we are seized around holding something against somebody. So like resentment. And it's not going to change the situation. It's not going to change the way somebody else behaves at all. And it doesn't even really feel good for us, even though we feel justified. It actually hinders our ability to flow. It hinders our ability to make use of the life that is now coming up all around us. And we can even like walk right past like all of these beautiful, joyful things because we're just like, my friends, and they did this to me and I, you know, how many times we get into that place. And so this is a request, like here is the energy that is now coming up, and now how to engage with it is to be considering the themes around forgiveness, around cooling. Now that the potentially now like the emotions are so visible and accessible, and maybe even we're expressing them a lot. What does that tell us? Where does it point to in us around what we need to learn how to forgive, or at least be willing to forgive? Because like, as with most things, it's easier said than done. So this is a cooling card. What else can I say about that card? I don't want to go on and on, but it is around the different ways that we can curse ourselves. You know, we don't really need anybody else to curse us. We can do a really good job of it ourselves when we are just holding on to that what do they say? Like that burning coal. It's not going to hurt anybody else. It just hurts us. Like, yeah. Anyway, so I'll move on from that card. And then if we work with this flowing, often tumultuous, cleansing aspect of ocean water, and then now this cooling river water for forgiveness, and what was the third question that I asked? Did I ask what else do we need to know? Yeah, I think so. So this is the finishing card for this cycle, and there is a lot happening in this card. And just a wee bit of background story, and I'll try to wrap this up, and this only be a 30-minute video. So much for me keeping it under 5 minutes. I guess it just doesn't happen. At least not for a 3-card reading. So what's going on in this card, let me back up. So way back a year and a half ago, I guess, when I realized that I had finished, you know, it was like 44 cards full stop. Like there was like, I finished the 44th card and I knew I was done. And I knew there were 44, and then I started going through all of the original pieces, like the 9x12s. I was like, oh, there's this one, there's this one, there's this. And then there were 5 of them that were missing. Like I couldn't find them anywhere. And I've heard that this has happened for people with whole decks of cards, with individual cards, with prints. And this happened with my originals. Like, these cards are weird. I am just facilitating them being around. They have a life of their own, I've come to realize. And I am just their caretaker. I feel this more and more. So one of the cards that was missing, I'm like, where is that one? Where is that one with the crocodile? And there's like a whole story around that I'll share at some point. I couldn't find it. And then I think it was the next day, and like I kept all of my papers together. All of my papers, all of my original pieces, like everything. I was quite meticulous at that point of just like, let's keep everybody together. Like, I don't know where any of this has gone, but I'm missing 5. And did I just dream them up? Like, did I not actually make them? So I think the next day was when I found the 5 that were missing. And this was one of the ones that was missing. And I would say, you know, missing. And in the missing of these 5 cards, I was taught part of what this card is relating to. And it was missing in combination with Edge of the Backwards Rider, which is this like this journey up a mountain. It was all the mountain cards. It was weird. Like Antidote was in there, Edge was in there. This one, there was another mountain card. Like all the mountain cards were missing. It's so weird. And so when they all returned, they returned in a certain sequence that said to me, this is part of the journey. This is part of, like, you know, we set out, I don't know, in a project, in a relationship, in, I don't fucking know, like anything. And we have this certain idea of why we're doing it and what it's going to be. And what we need to complete this journey. And really, we have no fucking clue. Like, we don't know what we're doing. And we just kind of fumble along. And that's part of it, the fumbling along, the wobbling, the uncertainty or whatever. That is how we are learning. And we are not just learning for ourselves. We're learning to bring something back to the village. We go on these like long, you know, circuitous, like wandering journeys. And we are meant to, I think we're meant to just like, I don't know what's happening. And we just kind of like figure it out as we go along. And in the figuring out, we're learning. And in the learning, we are storing. And in the storing of information and experience, we have now something to bring back to our communities, to our families, to the people that we're working with. And when they are going through certain things that we recognize, it's like, oh, well, you know, if you want to hear about my story around this, I'd be happy to.